quite honestly, we talk a lot about the failures of our educational system to actually prepare you and me for what it is that we're actually going to be doing in a life, and how that linear thinking in the educational environment actually limits your ability to think around the big decisions that you have to make, and how important it is to do your self-reflection, to do your personal development. And then if you don't, how dangerous that can be when there's a big change in your career that maybe you didn't see coming. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mindful Mutiny Podcast, because that is how we grow. So, Scott Allen, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Scott Allen's journey transcends personal achievement to empower podcast guests globally. As the best-selling author of Do the Hard Things First, Fail Big, and Relaunch Your Life, his books, translated into 16 different languages, have sold over 500,000 copies worldwide. With extensive experience as a corporate business trainer in Japan and a transformational success strategist, Scott has dedicated over 10,000 hours to researching and practicing confidence development and mindset mastery. His passion for teaching and skill building offers podcast listeners transformative insights into practical strategies for embracing challenges and fostering personal growth. Scott Allen is committed to inspiring people worldwide to take charge of their lives and pursue relentless self-improvement. So, Scott, with all of that, and you've got those wonderful books all lined up behind you, can you talk about what it is that you are and how you're working to change the world?
Absolutely. So yes, I am an author. I have a few books in the market, and I've been publishing for about a decade. I'm also a content creator, entrepreneur, and all around a very busy person with a lot of different projects. But that is the spice of life. So I think that the thing that keeps me going every day is just waking up and knowing that what I'm working on, whether it's a book project or if it's doing a podcast interview, I'm connecting with the world in a way that is helping somebody on the other side of the planet, or it could be somebody next door to me, to live a more fulfilling and greater life.
So I know that when the words corporate trainer get mentioned, that's
Mm.
something where people go, I'm not really sure that I'm into this. But what you're doing really feels like it jumps off the paper. It's about people actually working on themselves in and outside of their professions to really transcend limits for themselves. And so how do you do this empowering thing, and how do you teach people to find themselves?
Yeah. So the empowerment comes from my own personal struggles from way back in the day when, I'm one of these people who, when I was in school, I really struggled with school. I didn't feel empowered to, put in the work. I felt like, well, I didn't just feel like it, but I was told by my teachers that I wasn't going to make it through school. I had to take, special classes. And if I was going to get through school at all, I'd probably have to work really hard, like a lot harder than the other kids. And I didn't actually, at the time, I believed it. And then over time, I stopped believing it because I did work a lot harder than the other kids. And I did make it through school just barely. But it wasn't from a learning disability. It was more from I think, the belief that I had something in me that you can call it motivation or you can call it this drive, but I had a drive to make it. And what I realized is that it wasn't so much the fact that I had to be really good at math. I just had to get really good at, showing up every day for myself, putting in the work, and knowing that no matter what, I was going to empower myself if nobody else was. I'm going to empower myself to, you know, push through the tough obstacles so that I can get to the other side, and whatever that may be, whatever's on the other side of that ambition, there was something greater waiting for me over there. So what I teach people is, I share this story with them because people are at different stages in their life where, they're struggling with something. Could be school, could be their job, and maybe they're in a place where they want to make a change or they want to reinvent their life or, reinvent their identity. So I teach people that, no matter who you are, where you are, what your personal beliefs may be about yourself or what's happened in the past, you can change anything if you're willing to, put in the work. And later we can define what that means. For myself, it meant developing skills that I could transfer those skills into a business, or I could transfer those skills into, uh, like to overcome certain learning curves. And I found that skill sets, as opposed to, say, the education that I was buying into, is something that I could use to, build a business or create, write a book or whatever it may be. So anyway, I made a decision a little while back that I was going to change my lifestyle completely, and by doing so, I was able to, live this great life that I have this today. So
So am I hearing correctly that for a period of time, you were kind of living what would be considered a conventional life, a conventional corporate 9 to 5 sort of situation, and instead you went into doing the work that actually speaks to you and being able to be flexible? Is that what I'm kind of hearing out of you?
that's correct. Yeah. So I'll dive into the corporate side of things a little bit, because it does mention in my bio that working in Japan, I was working in a corporation for about 20 years, which was a great job, but it wasn't the work that really spoke to me. But it did prepare me for the road to come. And when I was in corporate, I was doing, like a lot of people in a job, I did a lot of work that I didn't really feel, I'll use the word passionate about. But I knew that this work could be leading to something greater. Now, yes, it did provide me with an income to raise my family, and it was a really good job. But there was something more that was burning inside of me that just wanted to get out. And a big part of that was actually the writing, the books, the creativity. That was what really fueled my fire. So as I was working in my corporate job, I would wake up in the mornings, go to bed late at night, and during those times I would be building, doing a lot of writing, working on my books, figuring out ways that, I could put the strategies that I had learned from all of my other mentors and coaches, whether they were Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, there's a whole list of people. And I took all those trainings from the past, and I put everything together, and I started to create my own material. Now, a lot of this, just came from the deep belief that I could create a life that was even greater than the one I'd already created. And I felt like I had a pretty good life already, coming to Japan and setting things up and everything, but I was never satisfied. In other words, I did not default to being comfortable, right? And when I was comfortable, something in me just said, hey, there's got to be more to it than this. And so my obsession just it drove me to figure out what that was. So I put in a lot of work to create a lot of material that it wasn't just for me. It was also to, help other people to overcome their challenges, because I figured if I can help other people to overcome their obstacles, their challenges, their fears, whether those were fears of rejection or the fears of failure or just fears in general, then the question that I always had is, what is possible? So that question was the real driver that kept pushing me forward.
The path up the ladder in corporate America it's so linear oftentimes. And I just recently had a conversation with a former colleague of mine that I worked with many years ago in a big corporation. And this person at the time, this is 10 years ago, was waiting for his boss to retire so that he could have a run at his boss's job. And his boss is now in his 80s, still has that position. And this colleague of mine is still waiting for this boss to retire so that his career can move up. And
Mm,
talking to him, I just felt so bad because here's 10 years of this gentleman's life where he's treading water in his career and he's not moving up and he's not really doing personal development that's leading to anything, and he is marking time in a job that I know how he feels about it. It's not a particular job that fills a great sense of purpose for him, but there's this sense that, oh, it's right around the corner. Once that one guy makes his own decision that he needs to leave this position, then is when my destiny opens up. And that feels so dependent
Mhm.
upon other people, instead of getting out there and going, no, this is what I need and I'm going to create it. And it sounds like you help people map it out on how you're actually going to create it, instead of waiting for someone else's plans to come forward.
That's correct. Yeah. I've always been big on creating my own destiny and having control of that destiny. So I've been in that situation where I was waiting for other people to make a decision or to move on so I could either take their position or I could put myself in a position of empowerment where I was going to be getting more money or better status or, higher position in the company. But I witnessed something where another colleague of mine was doing just that. And when he finally got to that position, I think they laid him off 6 months later. And somebody else I know who was in a similar situation in a different company, they were waiting for that position. And when it came around, they gave it to somebody else. And then he felt very deflated, like he'd been investing all his time into this business. And in the end, they just turned around and said, well, we're going with somebody else with this. And I looked at these
Devastating.
as, yeah, devastating. Yeah. I looked at these as, for me, they were good lessons. And I realized that I may have been in that similar situation where it's like I was, and look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with showing up to, your 9 to 5 job and putting in the time. But, and this comes down to the individual. For myself, I never felt like I felt there's something greater and I knew it, and whatever it was, I mean, I don't think I was born special or I have any special abilities or a superpower. Well, maybe, but I just knew that I wanted to prove to myself, not because I needed confidence or I needed to, you know, show the world how great I am. Just I knew something could be done that would put me in a position where I was, building the life that I wanted instead of relying on, a job or other people to give it to me. And that was for me, that was the breaker. And there are no guarantees. I mean, there are no guarantees either way. You stay in a job, you put in 10, 20 years, and, they can show up and just say, well, well, the company could close, or, they've just decided to go with somebody else who's, cheaper or whatever it may be. So my approach to this is that, if you're not in control of your destiny, somebody else is. And if you're not making the decisions that are moving your life forward, somebody's going to make those decisions for you. And those are the two things, I think, two lessons that I probably took away from, I think it was Tony Robbins or Jim Rohn. I've read a lot of their material, and those are the things that, Tony talked about in his, Master Your Destiny programs. And if I took away anything, like that was it. Like that was part of my identity, was just, creating the life that I'd always dreamed of.
What do you think of the major mindset mistakes that people in the professional world generally make when they're looking at the decisions they need to make about their lives and their careers?
I think one of the mindset mistakes that people have is that they're waiting for somebody to give them security. And I get that. Security is a very attractive thing. We all want to feel safe. We want to feel secure. We invest in, whether it be in a company or in a relationship. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. However, just keep in mind that, and this may not be a mindset mistake per se, but if you're waiting for somebody to, you know, give you your chance or, give you the promotion or give you the opportunity, whatever it may be, it may turn out that, they have other plans, right? So again, it's not a mindset mistake, but you have to prepare yourself for the fact that, you know, the failure that's going to come down the road may not be your personal failure. It may be somebody else may fail to, give you what you want. So again, it's you know, the I think that's one mindset mistake actually. I think the second one is just uh, you know, waiting for success by default. So by that I mean is that we have to put in the work for ourselves. Like we have to continue making ourselves better. And I know this sounds like a kind of a sky in the pie goal because it's really hard to track. You know, how do I know if I'm getting better? How do I know if my mindset is improving? And there's really not a good way to track that except for the fact that if you're showing up and putting in an hour a day on reading self-help books and or going through courses or watching YouTube videos. I mean, I think that's a good thing, but you have to do something with it. Like you do have to have a plan. And part of my mindset around this is just that if I'm not working on myself, then that means that I'm probably spending my time invested in something else. And what is that thing? So instead of investing in my own personal growth, maybe I'm watching TV or for 2 or 3 hours a day, and or just doing other things that are putting in the time. I don't like waiting for things, and what I mean by that is that if I'm not working on myself, then I'm probably waiting for somebody to show up and hand me whatever it is that I really want. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want to be in a position where my destiny, my purpose in life is up to somebody else. And this is just part of my mindset around this is, I need to try and take control of that. Now, it's hard to take control of something if you don't know what it is that you want. So I'm always very clear on what my goals are, which direction I'm moving in. And to get to that clarity, I do spend time writing things down in a journal, meditation, connecting with my inner self. It sounds a little bit woo woo, but the flip side to that is not doing any of that and, just, wasting time. And by the way, wasting time can be defined as anything that you're working on that is not investing in your personal growth. And again, personal growth is about you moving forward and not just about you, but if I'm moving forward, I want to be showing other people, the path. Like this is how, this is the road less traveled. This is how we can make it work. So I just love building my community around that.
What I notice in a lot of people is that they're just you so you have the younger people that are just trying to figure out, I don't know what to do with myself. My schooling didn't prepare me for anything in the real world. All of a sudden I'm in this real world and I thought I had skills and I don't because the university didn't teach me any skills that translate into the real working world, and so I don't know what to do with myself. And you've got the mid-career professional that's going, work is all right, but it doesn't really do anything for me. I just kind of ended up in this career and it's what I'm doing right now. And then you have this last quadrant of the career for a lot of people that are, if I could just make it another 5 years, it'd be good for the pension or like whatever the deal is. And all the way along, you have these corporations that could just, in essence, cut the cord on you. And because there has been no personal development, because there's been no self-exploration and goal making and these sorts of things, a lot of people, they get the cord cut on them and they are truly lost. And it's a huge existential dilemma for them because they are truly in a space where they don't know what the hell to do with themselves because now they don't have a job. They've got a short severance and and the job market is really, really tough. And so, what it sounds like what you're doing is you're teaching people just the best practices for knowing what you are so that anything can happen around you and you're Teflon. You're gonna be able to move on with this. You could be self-employed. You could be employed by this sort of thing because you've been working on the skills to actually be able to jump into the next pond.
That's correct. Yes. I think you have some interesting case studies there. Those three case studies. That actually happened to a quick story. That happened to my father. He was let go of his job 3 years before he was supposed to retire. Let
Oh,
go early,
yeah.
given a package, and he didn't have a plan after that. He didn't really have any hobbies. He had certain skills that were very marketable, but he was just lost after that. Within a year or two, I would say. He enjoyed the first couple of years, but he was let go too early. Again, had a good package, but he just had too much time on his hands and too much time to think about the past, to think about the things that he had not accomplished. And eventually, I think that's what really, did him in eventually. He just didn't have any substance after, the company had let him go. So when I looked at that, I think I'd made a decision that, I don't want that to happen to me, but also what could I have done to help him? Like that was what really bothered me the most is like, it was at the time I was starting to, write some books and put some content out there. So I felt like I was in a position to help people more instead of just becoming a victim to my circumstances, which going way back when like my mindset, eventually there was some point in my mindset where I made a decision that I did not want to become a victim to my circumstances. And by that, I mean, I didn't want to, have somebody else with their finger on the button that could basically just, end my career or put me in a position of weakness. In other words, I felt powerless to do anything about it because that's the other thing is that that powerlessness just makes you desperate, and also if you wait too long, if you're waiting on something for somebody to deliver something and they don't, just going back to the original conversation, well, now it's like, now what are you going to do, right? Now you've lost all this time. Maybe you're in your 40s, your 50s, maybe older, and you're waiting for something to happen. So there's that aspect of it. Now, going back to younger people that are, still in school, they're going through and they're getting educated, and education is training them to go out into the corporate world and get a job. So there are certain expectations around that. Um, I mean, I think that's, to be honest, I think everybody's, of course, we need job experience. And I think it's good to have that. I mean, I have lots of job experience that I've had throughout my life, and I don't regret any of it. But I always knew that, well, here's the thing. I was never doing the work that I was destined to do. But I had to have those jobs. Like I was very grateful for having the work that I had, whether I was working in a restaurant or, cutting lawns or, doing all those things. Like I look back at those things as good things, good experiences, because, they brought me to where I am today. Um, but when it came to the education side of things, I was never really, and I think this goes back to one of the reasons I'll say that I didn't hate school. I loved being there just for the fact of like making connections and friends and those kinds of things. But I never liked the work. I never wanted, and like, most people don't. I mean, no, not a lot of people go to school thinking, yeah, I'm going to study today. And maybe some people do. I think that's great. I wasn't one of them, uh, because I was the kid who was always staring out the window, daydreaming about going to Mars or daydreaming about, I loved movies. And every time I watched a movie, I wanted to be the hero in that movie. So I just had this very active imagination. And that probably almost failed me through school more than anything because I couldn't focus, But again, looking back, maybe that was a good thing. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
No, you and I are roughly the same age, and I'm sure that at your grammar school there were a bunch of kids running around talking to their watches like Michael Knight, and doing all the things that maybe the Duke brothers would do, and that sort of thing. It just that living your whole life through this kind of lens of the stories that you make up in your head. It's very distracting for the young ADHD a kid to, but it also that mindset, that imagination, that ability to think around things and that creativity, it can be a real boost. It's just not something that's particularly well fostered in the educational environment that we
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
in the Western world.
Yeah. When you go against the grain and you do things that are different. So if I remember telling people way back when that I'm going to be a great writer someday. I'm going to write all these stories. And of course, the kids kind of laugh and make fun of you because that's not something that most people do, maybe. I don't know. But that's what I wanted. And I remember just way back in junior high school, I would spend my time when I went home working on stories and writing books. And I think I'd written my first book when I was probably 14 or 15.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't do much of my math homework, which is probably maybe why I failed it, but I was okay with that because this writing thing was something I really loved to do. And I liked telling people that I was doing these things. And I liked having them said, "Oh, that's a crazy idea." And I was good with that, you know. And years later, turns out that I don't know, a lot of those crazy ideas were still with me. I still wanted to do those things. I wanted to travel the world and do the things that most people weren't willing to do because I believe that somehow that was the key to call it the key to success, but it was really the key to it was like it was my way of taking control of my future, my destiny, and there are no guarantees. Uh, there's no there wasn't anybody who said, if you do this thing, you're going to be successful and you're going to make lots of money and you're going to da 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 and all this. I just believed, without a doubt, that this was the path. One of my favorite books is The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. When I read that, the very first sentence in the book, I believe it says, I think it's life is difficult. And when you embrace that, you realize it is difficult. It's not easy. But if I can find a way to work through these difficulties, transcend them, not let them hold me back, what are the possibilities? And I just invite people to challenge themselves on that. When things are difficult, embrace it as a good thing. Maybe this is part of the mental toughness philosophy. But if you're not embracing the difficulties, then you may be defaulting to just the average or falling into your comfort zone. And hey, comfort zones are okay. We need to go in there sometimes and relax and enjoy ourselves. But I like going out of the comfort zone. I like being uncomfortable and exploring what's out there because that's actually when the opportunities opened up for me. So
Can you talk about your book, Fail Big, and
mm,
where that came from and what you encourage people to do?
yeah. I think the fear of failure is one of those things that holds a lot of people back because they're looking for a guarantee that they're not going to fail. Now, this goes a little bit back to where with the education system, for example, we go through school, we have tests, and when you fail a test, you're punished more or less. I mean, you might get held back, you have to write the test again. The bottom line is you can't fail. Um, and in the real world, I think that, well, let's just use Edison as an example. 10,000 light bulbs later, he, found what he wanted. But who's to say when he was at number 7,676, did he want to give up? Maybe. But he had a lot of failures, and hey, we can look at a lot of other examples of people who have failed companies, and so this book came about because I also struggled with the fear of failure. But I realized that it was actually looking back on the experiences I had and the jobs and, the, oh, it could be failed relationships, whatever it is. It's like, if we define these things as failures, then what we're actually doing is dismissing them as not important. Right. And I think that when you look back on your past, you have to look back on your experiences. Now, people have different experiences, and some of those experiences were traumatic, whatever that may be. I can't speak for what people have been through, but some of the things I went through, I defined them as bad experiences. They were failures. I wish I'd never been through that, and I had to reframe my mindset around that. That wasn't happy that some things had happened, but when I actually looked at it, it's like, well, maybe that happened because it had to, toughen me up and turn me into the person that I am today. And if you can look at who you are today and be relatively happy with who you are, knowing that you're not at the end of your road, you still have time. Time is still on your side if you're still here, so you'd still have the opportunity to make a difference. So we're going to. I think we fail throughout life. I mean, I think that's a great thing. Um, so I'm encouraging people to, and in the book, it's just I encourage people to embrace the failure mindset. That if you start down any new path, you're going to have a lot of obstacles and roadblocks and things that are going to trying to hold you back, whatever that may be. It could be, financial things. It could be health, something could go wrong with your health, whatever that may be. But the concept of the fail big is that you're going to fail. The question is, are you going to let it push you back and put you back to where you were before? So in other words, let's just say that somebody quits their job, they go to start. They want to be an entrepreneur and they go down that pathway. And the first job that they set up or the first company they set up fails, right? Now, I've had that happen to me. I've had a couple of those fail before. And when I did, I looked at it and I go, well, what could I have done differently? And what am I going to do? How am I going to apply that to the next company I set up? Because I realized that I got to the point of no return. Um, I learned from the failures. And again, if we just define what that is, having a failure is just it's it's data. It's just telling you, like you tried this thing, didn't work out the way you wanted to. You got a result, but what if we were to try things differently next time, or take a different approach? Or maybe it was a problem with my mindset. Maybe it was a belief that I had that caused me to fail. So you really have to just analyze it a little bit, try not to overanalyze it, but then you just have to move on with the next step, right? So what I'm saying is that failure can hold you back, but if you allow yourself to, try again, to push through, to take a different path, then the failures are going to happen no matter what. It's up to you how you define it, and if you make that decision to, and again, everything comes down to decision making too, right? We're always deciding things. Even if we say I can't make a decision, you're making a decision not to decide. So I made a decision that hey, I'm going to fail throughout this thing, make mistakes, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep going. I'm all about momentum, right? So, and I'd like other people to, that nobody has to copy me or do what I'm doing. But I think that if you're being held back by the fear of failing, or it's not going to work out, there's no guarantees, and there are no guarantees in anything. I mean, you go through school, you get your master's degree, and then you don't have a job, and there are no guarantees at the end of it that you will. So the only guarantee in life is that we're time is going to pass by no matter what. So you've got to embrace the moment that you've got. You've got to have a plan for where it is that you want to go. And if you don't know what the plan is, just work with somebody to figure it out. Take time to write this out in a journal. I do a lot of journaling, and it really helps me with clarity. I talk about my the bad times and the experiences and all those things. And again, I like to frame up bad times as like those are actually the good times, because they brought us to where we are. So
Do you see the corporate world as more volatile now than in the past 30 years?
mm, I definitely do. Now, my job here was relatively stable, but the thing is that it was unchanged. Like, it was, if I were doing the same job right now, I'd be doing the same kind of work. In fact, I know other people that are in that company still, and it's still the same job, and nobody's moved on and all this. And I'm glad that I did, because a lot of these companies are just they're very willing to just let you go for somebody cheaper. And I mean, and the thing is, I see this has happened to a lot of my friends actually, and colleagues, like people who had a lot more education than I did. Um, they worked in their jobs sometimes a lot more than I did, or like a lot longer. And there's just there's no commitment there. It's like you're there to do a job, and they're going to pay you for that. And when they're done with it, then they could be done with you. And you could just show up one day with a box on your desk, and you have to pack in. Look, a lot of people have been in that situation, right? So I definitely think it is more volatile, because I mean, going back way back, like I remember my grandfather worked in an oil refiner for 40 years, and back in those days, like it was the norm to maybe work in a job or work in a business for 30, 40 years. And by the way, in Japan, for the longest time, that was still a very stable environment, because I know people here who have been in their jobs for like 20, 30, 40 years. And actually, even here, where I didn't think that it was as vulnerable as the West, lately, like the layoffs and everything have become, they're starting to model the way that things are being done in the West now. So I'm seeing, meeting a lot more Japanese people who were, made big promises when they signed up at their company, were let go like 10 or 15 years later or 5 years later. So yeah, I'm seeing it all across the board, actually.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing a corporate environment that is exceedingly hypocritical because
Mm,
there's this sense, we're all a family here. That's how we function in this. And then the second that they don't need this department, they just outsource them and
mhm,
these sorts of things. And then people have been given that assurance and have believed it and based their life plans on it, and then they just feel so blown away. And so you teach people these skills for the transformational success strategy. What are the skills that you teach people in order to be that kind of Teflon, that to have that ability to grab the next rung of the ladder before this one has collapsed?
mhm. Well, first of all, you have to know what it is that you want. So I'll just start with knowing what you want. No, not everybody knows what they want. They just know that they want something different, right? So sometimes we have to go back a little bit and start with something different. Identity. Right? So part of identity is one of these things that I just love to talk about because it's the one thing that you have control over. And when I talk to people about reinventing their lifestyle or having a transformation, what it really is about is changing your identity. Because if you can make an identity shift, that's where you actually can build the new you, the next you, build a second brain, all those things. So the identity is a big part of this. And for you to so just give you an example, going way back before I moved to Japan, I think my identity at the time was, I was really heavily into drinking and partying and really like I went down the path of like alcohol abuse and everything. So my identity, a big part of it was built around that lifestyle. And that's all I would talk to people about is, how much I drank the night before and I busted the place up and all this and I just felt really glorified by that identity. However, after I got out of it and I made a conscious decision to do this because I just didn't want that anymore, and it wasn't. I felt like inwardly it wasn't me. Right? So, in order for me to create a new identity, I had to remove myself from anything that had to do with that. I connected with mentors, coaches, sponsors, got my head clean, and I started to build an identity. I would call it like a new belief system that there was something bigger out there. And that's when I started to put together a plan to, travel overseas. And I had this vision to create this new life for myself, and the more I worked on this plan, I could feel the identity that I had for myself is like I went from, big party guy to suddenly this I'm going to be this world traveler. I'm going to go out there and make a difference in the world and just create this new life for myself that I have control over. And I did this, but I had to first of all work on the belief that it was possible. And I did this by immersing myself in books and information and talking to people, and then eventually it did happen. So what I'm saying is that a big part of this is the identity too. Like if you went through the education system again, and I notice like a lot of people, they will identify themselves with their work, which I think is a good thing. I mean, I do that as well, but it's not all that I am, right? But a lot of people, they'll identify themselves with a certain, let's just say somebody's a lawyer, right? And their identity is like, I'm a lawyer. And so uh, that's great. But what if one day, like that doesn't exist for you anymore, right? And again, this happened to my father. Like his identity was very closely related to his work. When he didn't have it anymore, I think he didn't have his identity, and he's like, now who I am, now what do I do? Right. So outside of like what I've been trained to do or what I've been educated to do, there has to be that identity where it's like, this is like this is who you really are. This is your primary, uh, motivator in life. This is your thing. Like I always wanted to build my own thing that was, you know, excluded from all the, whatever I've been trained to do or educated to do in my work. I knew that, if I could develop the skill sets that could move me forward to, say, build a company or, learn a language, for example, like that was going to open up new opportunities. So my identity became somebody of rather like this. I feel like a flexible sponge where I was able to make that power shift very quickly, which is why when I went to Japan, I was able to immerse myself in the culture. Whereas other people, they got rejected by it and they went back home because it just wasn't working for them. I just wanted to put myself into a situation where everything was totally new. I was able to, learn the language, learn the culture, build a new identity around somebody who, years ago I was over here doing all this partying and all this stuff. Now I'm over here working with CEOs and business executives and training people that normally I would not be in a room with, people who had billions of dollars, and which was interesting too, because part of my identity that I struggled with was a scarcity mindset. So when I started working with people who had money, they started teaching me things about it that I'd never really, considered before. So again,
Mm.
it's connecting with another group of people that are, sure, maybe they're a few steps ahead of you or way ahead of you, but that's a good thing. I had imposter syndrome a lot when I would stand in front of a crowd of people and I had to give a presentation, and some of them were like, they were running these major corporations, and I'm like, who am I to be up here doing this, But that's the thing is like just doing it scared, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. At the time, as hard as it was, when I would put myself in that situation and just go through it, on the other side of that, you're going to make yourself a lot tougher. And again, when things do get tough, when the market is crashing, or whether no matter what's happening in the world, like you've got yourself. That you've been through uh, a lot of pain and hard times, and you've proven to yourself, and this is the most important thing, building trust with yourself is one of the most important I think values you can really invest in. And the only way to do that is to, like, I think, go through hard times, not give up, right? Embrace like, we'll call it the fear of failure, but just like, the fail big philosophy is like, I might fail, but I'm going to make it through this and I'm going to get to the other side. And there are no guarantees that's, what's on the other side of this, journey I'm on, but I'm just going to keep pushing forward. So,
Tell me about your upbringing.
all right. So I grew up in Canada, as I mentioned before, and I grew up in a middle class home. Both parents had really good jobs, and I think I was a normal kid for the most part. But it was interesting because I went back to Canada recently, and my mother loves to tell stories like parents do, and she was telling everybody about how when I was a kid, I had all the kids in the neighborhood. I had everything organized, and I had them building like forts, and we would go out and get all this material and wood and nails, and we'd be in the back. I spent 2 months building a house behind my house. It literally was like a 4 or 5 story fort. And then I had all the kids coming over and they would spend the night there. I charged them like $1 each, like it was a hotel. Right. So part of my entrepreneurial the path for that really began early. When I was 14, I asked for a lawnmower for my birthday. My father was like, "A lawnmower? What? I thought you wanted a PlayStation." I was like, "No, I want a lawnmower." Because the neighbors could not mow their lawns. So I set up a little side hustle for myself where I started going around cutting people's grass during the summer. I made more money than all my friends, and I was making more money than some of my father's friends, because I was just doing all this like painting, and I was really a hard worker, right? And I loved the work. I loved just like showing up early in the morning, cutting someone's grass, and then in the afternoon I'd be painting a house, and I'd be on fishing boats and doing all these things. So I was very active, but I also I love the fact that I could create my own work. I saw a need, and then I just fulfilled that need. So when I got my lawnmower, I put it to work, and then I
So
in
cool.
order. Yeah. And then I had to outsource it to some of my friends because they're like, I had too much work and I couldn't take it all. So I would, hire Johnny down the street for, $3 an hour and charge the neighbors $6 an hour. So it's kind of like, and I just remember like back in those days, maybe that was the start of something greater down the road. Who knows? But I also realized how hard it was at that age to manage other people when they didn't show up for work too. So
Yeah. That's the thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's management. And
Yeah.
so, as you grow older and you're in, this kind of trajectory of where you go, how did you handle setbacks in your life? You have all these like wonderful ideas and so forth. And I'll bet you, like anybody who finally gets what they're about, you've got to get knocked around a little bit before you get there.
Yeah, for sure. So this may come down to, I mean, I'll give you an example of a setback. So I actually failed high school, right? I was 2 credits short of graduating. So I never really had a graduation. And at the time, I was going out with the smartest girl in the school who actually had a scholarship. So here's this guy over here with an ACDC jacket who just, failed school. And, I had to, but I'll get back to I'm going to come back to that in a second. There's a story there. And I was dating the smartest girl in the school. And it was just, my parents would look at it and they were like, well, maybe she can help Scott out. Maybe this will have like some kind of a good influence on him. Right. But I didn't like that because I just had something in me that, again, when it came to failing, I just didn't accept it. Right. And the teachers would tell me all the time, you're not going to make it. You might as well just take the general courses and then you can work in the local factory. Right. And I always remember the story of Jim Carrey when he would go back to his hometown and he'd look across the water at the factory where everybody else was working, and, he realized like he could be working there too. But he decided to take, I don't want to call it a higher path, but it was a different path, and maybe it was a higher path for him, and I always like loved that story because I thought, like, yeah, that's the path. But going back to, failing through school and everything, well, although I did, I figured out how to, get my high school diploma. Actually was I didn't go to university right away. I took 2 years off, worked really hard in some like jobs that like construction jobs that were like, it's like -20 outdoors and I'm pushing a wheelbarrow. And meanwhile, these kids from my like local high school are going to university driving a Mercedes Benz. And I was just like, why them and not me? And that really just lit a fire under me. So what I did is I ended up taking this way before internet and all this, of course. So I took these correspondence courses where basically you work on these courses, you send off the lessons to the teachers, and you go through these courses and you get credits for your high school. I took physics and math. I took all these courses that I failed in high school, and I thought, screw it, I'm going to do it. And I took a physics course, mathematics course, calculus. I passed them, and then I was able to go through high school and then get into engineering school, which never would have happened, right? And I was like, and it wasn't just to show people like there. You see, I did it. I had to do it for myself because I just couldn't accept the fact that I wasn't going to accept the fact that I, failed high school and that was it, I'm just going to go do these odd jobs and whatever. So I don't know. Somebody said to me like recently, is like, well, do you think you were born differently? You had this special ability to just push through. I'm like, no, anybody can do this. It's just that, what are you willing to accept? Right. I mean, sure, you can just, you can give up if you want to, but, I knew that by going through that and being able to transcend the problem, because here's the problem is like, okay, the problem is I need to get into university or college because I don't want to be pushing a wheelbarrow in the middle of winter. And that was a big wake up call for me. It's like, I remember the day when I made that decision. It's like, nope, this isn't going to work out, and I knew that I wanted more out of life. I knew that I could have more out of life. And that was my trajectory. That was the decision I made that just pushed me forward to get it. Right. But you do have to have a plan. It's like, if you want more out of life, you better have a plan for getting it. Because no one's going to show up and, give you that degree or give you the job you want. Right. You got to know what you want. You've got to go after it. Now that may sound a little bit like, um, I don't know, it's not like a motivational speech, but it's the truth. I mean, if you don't know what you want, somebody's going to show up and just, give you the work that they want you to do. And it comes down to like, if you're not living, working on your own dream, you're working on somebody else's. And again, I've just always wanted to, sure, I spent, I've done a lot of jobs over the years, put in a lot of work on things, and maybe I did build other people's dreams, but I also, at the back of it, I was also working on my own. Maybe I wasn't announcing it publicly. But this is the thing that too, when I'm working with people, it's like it always comes down to, what do you want and what are you willing to do to get it? And I think that's the difference there is like you've got to decide that for me, the mindset around this, and it always has been, is that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And anybody can apply this, right? Because what'll happen is, we will run into hard times. Nothing's going to work out. Someone's going to rip you off, like whatever it might be. But the question is, okay, well, now what? Like, that's really the only thing is now what are you going to do? And I'm borrowing that from like Tom Bilyeu, who was like I just love Tom Bilyeu's material. And, as part of I've taken his courses and watched a lot of his interviews, and that's always the question. He has this T-shirt that he wears, and it's interesting. I asked him one day in a mastermind group, I was like, "Why do you wear that T-shirt?" He's like, "Well," and the T-shirt, by the way, said, "It's all my fault." So, and it's like he's like, when you start with that, what else is there? Like, it's all my fault, because I do find like some days I'm still trying to blame somebody for something. I'm blaming my ex-wife for this or that. And, and that just leads back into the victim mentality, which is the one mindset that I am very conscious of that I want to destroy, right? Destroying the victim mentality, destroying the scarcity mindset, because those two things right there are two of the things that were like, I think always, holding me back. Right. But just being self-aware that they exist. So, anyway, that was probably a lot.
No, I'm thinking of this in terms of what are the main messages that people are getting when they are going to school. And number one, school is taught by academics, and academics know the academic world. In the academic world, you advance by looking at a syllabus and accomplishing the things that are on this. It's an extremely linear kind of life. It's very action and reward oriented. It's listed in the catalog exactly how you get that diploma at the end, and that's the master of the whole like concept of what you're supposed to be doing there. And so then you get into the working world and you have a job description, and that tends to be in many cases exceedingly linear. And so there's this very linear way that most people are adhering to because that's the way that we have designed how we are productive in this world. But when you're looking at your life, your work, your dreams as a strategy, there's nothing linear about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to do with a lot of you filling your own tank
Mm-hmm.
with the rocket sauce that gets you to the next level of what you need to be. And I've seen in my career a lot of people who they end up getting into a position that pays very well and is very secure. And their
Mm-hmm.
brains go boop. And
Mm-hmm.
they just do that for a decade in and decade out. And they're quite okay with that. That drives me nuts. The concept of just the total stagnation of that. And I just wonder what would happen at which point there was some kind of a change in
Mm-hmm.
that company, in that agency or something like that, that would leave them to have to figure out a next place to go. I think that the skills that you're talking about, they're just base level skills that are not taught enough in
Mm-hmm.
our foundational years of learning life and all of this. And so the skills that you're teaching are the base level skills for how to actually run a successful life, as opposed to the skills that are learned, which is how to conform yourself to the status quo in order to get the ultimate result, which is either the diploma or the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And that side of things seems very dry. It seems very vacant. It seems very underwhelming to me. And what you teach is how to help people strategically transcend that kind of thing, and so that they can truly accomplish the things that they really need to live that the fullness of life in their lifetime.
I love how you worded that, and I think that is exactly it. Um, so when it comes to the skills we learn in school, I'll call them skills. Um, I mean, in school, and as you may know, I was never taught anything about money. It was never discussed in school. Of course, we don't have, we had economics in school, which doesn't teach you about money really. I don't remember what I learned in that class, but outside of that, I didn't talk about it in our family. So, and this is just an example, but uh, I went through most of my life not knowing anything about money. Like it's the one skill that I would say I was afraid of learning because I just didn't understand money, didn't understand where it. Yeah, sure, we worked for it, and then we work for it, and we buy stuff, and But I mean, when it came to abundance or investments or like all these things that now we have all these resources where you can learn about money, but that was the one skill that if I had to take any of them, and things change over time as well. I mean, the concept of money and investing and all this has changed over time, but um, the one thing that I wanted to learn probably was just how to balance a bank book or handle, like, not have debt or any of this stuff, and that was just never discussed in school. And I look back now and I was like, I wonder, was there a reason for that? And like, I've looked at a lot of other interviews around this, and people say, well, that was a strategically placed that way just to keep you in the dark so that, you get a job, you get into debt and get your house and all this, and then they've got you, and I was like, no, I don't know if that's true or not. But when I look at it, it's like, I mean, if I were to set things up differently, like I'd rather, I'd like to empower my children to know that this is how money works, and this is how the abundance mindset works, as opposed to the scarcity mindset, which probably like I think there are different types of mindsets, and the scarcity mindset came from like the fear of not having money, but not just not having money, but actually having it. Like, what if I actually get it? What do I do with it? And you hear this about going off topic a little bit, but lottery winners who get a lot of money or people who inherit money, if they're not emotionally prepared to handle it, they end up losing it or squandering it or, whatever it is. But so a part of my skill set has been to, you know, train myself to not just to make more money, because I found like if I make more money, I could end up just like spending more of it, which I've done that many times and put myself into, like financial debt. But what if I could use the money to, feed more people in the world or make a difference? And a lot of this his like when I think of it that way, I felt like, okay, well, I didn't need any education for that. This came about from like tapping into what other people are training us. Like this stuff is free on YouTube and podcast interviews, right? But I think you have to want to go down that road. You have to want to take a different path. It has to be an intentional decision, and your actions must be intentional as well. In other words, like, yes, you do have to know what you want. And if you don't know what you want, at least identify what you don't want. And if you can identify what you don't want, that's a good thing too. And again, it comes back to self awareness. Like, maybe, yeah, I've got this job, I've had it for 5 years or 10 years, but I don't enjoy the work. So, um, what do you enjoy doing? And when I say enjoy, I mean, what is something that you can build or work on that is going to give you fulfillment and can bring you in income, can actually make a living? Like those two things there. If you can take those two things and, build your thing, um, first of all, you're going to train yourself how to do it, and then you can teach other people how to do it too. I'm all about helping people to set them free. In other words, like what is the big dream? What is it that you really want? And you'll be surprised. Most people, I don't want to say that most people don't know. I don't think they've taken enough time to actually explore it. I think people do know, and they've squashed it. Like I remember way back when I was a kid, I had big dreams about all kinds of things. I loved adventure movies and just getting into trouble, and not like with the police, but just like, trouble that kids would get into. I was just always very adventurous, and I never wanted to lose that. Even when at a point in my life where I did lose it, I wanted it back, you know. And I'd encourage anybody to, take the time to, whether you've got a, if you're taking a week off for vacation, I mean, I'm not saying you have to go to a meditation retreat, but take that time to really explore, like, what it is that you really want. I don't think you have to go deep and try to figure out your life's purpose and all that. I mean, you have a purpose. We're here, here's our purpose right here. Question is, what are you going to do with the time you have left? Because going back to, the conformity thing, I see that all the time. Like I saw it, I see it back home. And when, I was back home in the West, I see it here all the time, because that's what education is all about, is, training you to get a job. And hey, if you're okay with that, then do it. And again, I said, like, doing work is a good thing, right? But it doesn't have to be the be all and end all, right? I think having work experience is a great thing, because it teaches you discipline. It may connect you with other people that are working in the business, but have a game plan, right? Like, know that there's something bigger down the road, but you've got to prepare yourself for that. You've got to build your own luck. In other words.
I wanted to just return to this whole concept of education, because it was probably about 15 years ago that Mike Rowe began to really gain prominence with his show Dirty Jobs, showing exactly how much money you can make in jobs that were not necessarily seen as, let's just go ahead and say, desirable jobs. Okay. And he would be showing the incredible skill that it takes to do some of these jobs, whether it is, driving a septic truck, or doing plumbing, or, building houses, or like whatever these things are. And fewer and fewer young people have pursued these routes, because they're being encouraged by their teachers, who are people who know education, and in many cases haven't lived outside of education very much. They're being encouraged by their parents and their educators to go one direction in life, when there's other things out there for them that would likely make for quicker success and a greater sense of personal satisfaction working with your hands, having built something. And I think it's a real shame, because you have a number of young people who are graduating with degrees, and they're not able to compete in the working world with fewer jobs that for which those degrees are prerequisites. Are you seeing the sort of thing?
I definitely am, yeah. And I think that, you're going to spend 4 to 6 years studying, whatever that may be. And meanwhile, out in the business world, things are just changing so rapidly. Sure, with the AI and everything else that is going on, the time that you're spending in school, by the time you get out, how do you know that everything that you've been studying is going to be like obsolete within a year or two of you graduating? And by the time you graduate, it might already be obsolete. Like, that's just a long time to spend towards. And look, I don't know if you're studying to be a doctor, or, like whatever it may be, or studying business management, like by the time you graduate, that's when your education really begins, is when you get into the workforce, right? And then you realize, like, oh, they didn't teach me this in school, and I just realized I have to have this skill and this skill and this skill if I'm going to make it in this company. And some companies might be just be like, like, I don't know, like they're still looking at your education as if like that may be the entry point to get the job. But after that, then the real education begins. So, I mean, that's a big commitment. And I think I'm just going to throw my hat in the ring and just say, like, in the future, when it comes to like universities and colleges, like they're going to have to shorten that to go from like, degrees may go from 6 years to 2 years, or they may become obsolete altogether. Because the truth is, we can learn anything we want to. I mean, look, I'm not saying go online and figure out how to do YouTube videos so you can make 6 figures a month, right? That is possible. Truth is, it's also really hard, to do that. And you've got to be really, got to know what you're doing. You got to be dedicated. But there's also skill sets embedded in doing that as well. Like, you're going to learn how to do those things. I'm learning skill sets around like email marketing, for example, because I've never learned this before. I know a little bit about it, but I know that if I can figure out how to build out an email funnel, I can bring in customers, I can have products where I can sell to them directly, and I could have this set up within 3 weeks or 2 weeks, right? And my point there is that I didn't need to go to school to learn how to do it. I found a course or two on it. I connected with a couple of people who already done this, because the greatest way to get ahead is to find somebody. Like, don't start from scratch. Find somebody who's already done it, model what they're doing, and then go build your thing and just like revise it as you go, right? So that's really like, that's when it comes to, like, I think rapid growth. That's real for me. That's really what it's all about, is like, I know what I want to do this thing. I'm going to find out who's done it. I'm going to model what they did. All right. Education is just kind of more linear, where it's just like, you want to be, I don't know, a biologist. Well, here's the course. It'll take you 6 years. And then when you graduate, like, here's what your income will be. And they'll even give you the income scale, right? So now you can predict your income, right? And that's just another thing too. Sure. I mean, when we take a job, we always have our income is set, and they don't want you probably moonlighting and doing other work as well. So you've got this one job where your income level is set, even if it's set at 100,000 a year, and that's what you've got to play with, right? But my path was like, okay, well, again, I don't like having those restrictions where somebody else is telling me, like, this is what you're worth, this is what you can do, and they're putting you in a box and basically saying, like, we're going to train you to do this job. And it's like, well, I mean, okay, but what if there's like something else? So, like, can I be creative? Can I, like, how flexible is this position, right? And it turns out that they actually so again, just going back to the job that I had before, they didn't want your ideas, they didn't want you to be too creative. They just gave you your box to play in, and that was it. And I think a lot of people are in that situation where they get into a company after they graduate, and then reality hits, is like, wow, this is actually not quite what I expected. I hear that all the time. People say, I got into this job expecting one thing, and just I hate the work. And it's like, and the question always comes back to, okay, well, you hate the work, but here's the trap though. A lot of people, like, they are invested in their education because they spent a lot of money on it, they put in the time, and now you'll notice, like, even years later, and I see my friends still doing this in their 40s or their 50s, they're still working in the same job because that's what they've always done, right? And I hear this all the time. Like, they'll say, well, yeah, but I don't know how to do anything else. It's like, no, you're not doing anything else. Maybe you want to do something else, but you're stuck. You think like this is what you have to do, and it's not. Like, and sure, we have bills to pay, we have to work and do that. But if you don't want to work in this profession, then what is it that you really want to invest your time in? Because time is, we're running against time, right? So the more time you spend doing the work you hate, the less time you're going to have to be doing the work you love to do.
Mm-hmm. There's I just watched a quick video the other day, and it had young people who were working on their degrees saying what their degrees were. And I was flabbergasted at the names of these degrees, these things that are worthless in the working world. And these young people with this great sense of pride and hope are talking about these degrees as if these degrees are going to take them somewhere, and the disappointment that they're going to experience on the other side of this. These young people who, in a really difficult economy, are majoring in something like art and dance theory. I just go, what is it that you are going to do with that? What is it that you think you're spending 85 to 120 grand on there, that you're going to have to pay back and get a job that's not in that, and be working alongside people that may not even have a degree or that level of debt?
Mm.
And it's really is a crime against these young people, because they've been chosen. Just choose something that you like, that you're really interested in, and get it, because employers really value that, and they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Employers less and less are valuing that sort of thing. And it's a little hypocritical of me to talk about this because I have two master's degrees, but I am also using both of those things in the work that I do and that I am creating with my own entrepreneurial thing. I wouldn't necessarily need the MBA, but it's been helpful. And so, but I think there's a lot of the educational system overselling its effectiveness to young people, and it's a real dent in the in what these young people are able to accomplish, because all of a sudden they are out in the real world trying to find a job with the kind of debt that would have been a house
Mm-hmm.
30 years ago, but they don't have a house. They just owe the government money. And so it's a really, really sad thing that really does a real dent in young people's morale. So, I don't know, perhaps at this point we're kind of beating a dead horse here, but the creation of a value set early on that can help guide a person towards that North Star of what am I worth? What is the thing that I feel most effective doing? I like helping people. I like building things. I like figuring out the solutions to problems. And do you need a degree to do those things? Is the answer yes or no? And so, what you do in helping people get definitive about what they want to do, honestly, feels like this should be something that's taught in high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I think that people get stuck because and just going back to our early years in junior high and high school, like it's preparing us for going into college or university to get that degree. It's preparing us for, I'll use conformity as the word. It's conforming us to the rules and setting us up for yeah, like I remember sitting down with a guidance counselor going, it's like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I believe that I had to make a decision right then and there what it was. And I had no idea. And probably like a lot of other younger people these days, there's like, and sometimes I ask my kids, like, though, someday when you grow up, what do you want to do? And like, they don't know. They're just in school working through the week. And it's just such a like, I mean, I think that's a good question to ask because it gets you thinking like, well, what would I like to do? What would I like to do? Or what really, and again, like getting into I really like to get into the nitty gritty of like what really drives you, because once we start buying into that conformity and we start to squash the dream, and I really think, let me just say, like education for the better part of it, like whatever your dream is, I guarantee you that the education system doesn't care about it. And I've had my dreams squashed and I've bought them back. I've taken them back. Right. And I'm glad I did. But, I had to overcome a lot of the old mindsets, still am. I mean, it's still a part of it's still with me. But I think that, let me just wrap it up by saying, you have a good point there because if you see something in the marketplace that a problem that needs to be solved, right? Well, yeah, do you need a degree to solve it? No, you just have to figure out how to solve this, and you can package that up and you can sell it as something. You can help people to overcome, because you can help people to overcome their problems, whether they're financial problems, personal problems, health problems. um, Wow, I mean, and I'm not saying everybody has to go out there and start a business and become an entrepreneur. But the thing is that you have the ability to do whatever it is that you really want to do. And I think that's the belief system that a lot of people are, they need to grab hold of that, right?
Yeah.
And again, what I would recommend to anybody is just you know find somebody who's already done it and model what is working, like model that process. I'm really big on like developing a process and a system for something, mostly based on maybe what other people have done, and then I'll kind of customize it as well, and build my own process and my own system for it too, because things can always be improved. But I didn't learn any of this in school. and if I'd asked, they probably would have, like, I don't think anybody would have taught it to me, but it was just something that, again, and this is just more of my, going out into the world. And, I did work in a lot of like many different jobs, but, the consistency of what I could see is like, I would always look at that job and go, it's a good job for now, but not what I really want, and I didn't marry myself to that identity either. So again, I think a big part of the, like graduating with a degree, and then you build this identity around that, and that becomes your identity, right? Which again, that's fine. It's just that, if somebody takes that away from you, what is left? And you've got to be ready to, to springboard off of that, and have something more to, you've got to, here's what I always say, like, when the music stops, I want to have a chair to sit in. Right. So if I'm working in a company, and I've always had this, my mindset, when it came to like working in a business, is like, this is going to end someday. And when it does, where are you going to be? Right. So I was always thinking ahead that way. Like, when the music stops, will I have a chair to sit in? The answer is no. I better go build one.
So bottom line it for me. What is your message to the world about the importance of the things that you have created here, that you teach? What is it that people really need to keep in mind as they're living their lives, living their careers? What is Scott Allen's message to the world?
Mm. Think that the one thing I'll say is that, you have the power to take control of your own destiny. And I'm not trying to quote Tony Robbins or anything like that, but it's just true, right? Um, the question is like, what are you willing, like, at what point are you willing to, conform to, can we just edit that out? I just want to go back. There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah, we're just
Okay.
gonna do it again. 5, 4, 3.
So I'm all about, dream building, right? And just let me just define what that is, right? Building your own dream is like, it's like having your own rocket ship, okay? And look, if you have to go through the education system and get your degree because, like, for whatever reason, maybe you're being propelled to do this by mom and dad, or you just feel like you need to do that. And I think I mean, it can be a good thing because, as you mentioned, like, you have 2 master's degrees and you're using them, right? And maybe those have opened up a lot of opportunities for you. So I think that, um, that can open up some really good opportunities and maybe put you into the workforce, and you can start, working on a career. But I encourage people to, explore the greatest, like, depths of themselves. And what I mean by that is, like, take the time to figure out what it is that you really, who are you? Like, what is it that you're really about? Right. Because the education is not going to probably tell you what that is. You have to take, you know, the reins of your own life. You have to figure out, um, you know, this is who I am, and I'm going to help people to, figure out what they want, because that's my strength, right? A big part of my, oh, hold on, I'm screwing all this up. Let me just go back again. Yeah, I'm glad we can edit this stuff out.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. You're doing great.
All right. Okay. So my biggest thing is that I love teaching people how to build a life that is their own. And for me, like, the one thing that I've always wanted was just to look, it was just to write books. Like, that was it. I mean, it wasn't easy to do that. But if you had asked me 40 years ago, I would have said, I want to be an author and I want to write books and I want to sell these books all over the world. I'm doing that now. But there was a period in my life where I wasn't doing that, where I went into, sure, went through education, got a lot of jobs, did a lot of stuff, but I never lost sight of what I wanted. But I talked about it. Like, I want people to stop talking about the things that they wish they had done and start doing them. And if you have to do this, if you have to wake up early in the morning to do it, you have to stay up late at night to do it, then that is great. Like, do that. Because if you don't, time's going to go by really quickly. I know people in their 20s might be listening to this going, oh, but I've got lots of times. Like, how do you know you do? You know, you don't know that. Right. And when I was 20, I thought that as well. And I'm now 50. And I realized, well, maybe there's not that much time left. There's no guarantees you'll make it to 60, 80, or 100. So, uh, you don't have to figure out what you want right away, but you need to put in the time. And I'd recommend just like whatever it is that you're doing right now, if you're working in your job or you've got your life,
Yeah.
um, hey, wake up early in the morning. That's what I still do that. I wake up early, put in some time towards bettering myself through meditation, deep breathing. Um, I'll read a little bit, and those three things right there just get me really grounded, right? Because you need clarity. Clarity is the key, and clarity doesn't just come. It's not something that'll maybe just drop out of the sky and hit you, but it does come when you actually put in the time. And sure, having goals and all that is really good, and I do believe like you got to have goals to move forward, and an action plan. um but go back to like go back to your childhood and just go like, what did I, if somebody had asked me before I, like, because we get thrown into life, and life just goes like boom, like we're just like it's game time from the moment we're born. So you know and just go back and ask yourself, like, what's that one thing I would have done, if somebody had asked me that question in, like, I don't know, elementary school or junior high school, whatever it may be. And there may come a time on the path where you lost sight of that. And I think does happen to most people. But I think everybody knows what their real dream is, what their real purpose is. We're just avoiding it, and we've killed it. And hey, you got it. You can bring it back. Trust me, you can bring it back. I brought it back many times when, the world tried to tell me that it's not going to happen. You're not worth it. You're just dreaming. I loved it when people told me that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I am. And just going against the conformity. So
How do
you are
people
the master. Yeah.
how do people find you?
They can go to scottallenbooks.com. We have the Shopify store set up where we have like all the books are for sale on there. I've got a course platform launching in a few months, more on that, but they can find those on scottallenpublishing.com. So basically, I have two websites. The other website is more just for basic information about the books, because we connect with a lot of publishers and media. So, hey, if you just want to check out the books, you can go to Amazon. They've got a lot of products on there, and if you plug in Scott Allen, author of books, you will find the books on there as well.
Hmm.
You want to listen to more podcasts? Probably just go to Google and plug in my name. I think done a lot of interviews over the last few months. You'll probably and you'll probably discover this one as well in a little while too. So.
Well, fantastic. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for bringing a message here of strategy, a message here of helping people understand the importance of really being intentional about what your plans are, about where you're going, and that you can't just end up somewhere where you can, but it's not nearly as fulfilling as actually building the ladder yourself and going exactly where it is that you want to go. Because, like you said, no one else is going to do that for you. So, thank you for bringing a message of personal responsibility and this message of really forging your own way, because it is absolutely a message of personal empowerment. So, thank you for that wonderful message and for being who you are in the world and bringing this kind of knowledge to people.
I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on the show. It's been great.
Absolutely. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mindful Mutiny podcast. In a lifetime, there are more decisions than anybody can count. Living the highest form of yourself is the most rewarding thing that you can do. Make incredible, positive, risky, and bold decisions to be the highest version of you. Now go be something great.